Welcome back. Breathe softly and let the world fall away for a moment, because in this chapter, the subtle tension that has been gathering finally begins to take shape. The shadows become clearer, motives sharpen, and the path ahead no longer hides its direction. Here you will hear the first true echo. Night settled over the hidden valley with the softness of a shroud, not heavy, not cold, just final. A night that knew it was the last one I would spend here before descending again into the world that had tried to swallow me. The keepers lit their blue torches one by one, their flames trembling as if whispering secrets. To the wind, Ashur Nadine stayed near me, close enough to protect, far enough to respect the gravity of the moment. The silver-haired woman, the keeper of keepers, had already spoken the prophecy. Now it was time to prepare for the path it demanded. She approached quietly, her steps soft on the stone. "Tomorrow," she said, "your descent begins." I nodded slowly. "I know. You will go down the mountain," she continued, "but you will not walk as the woman who bled in the sand." She placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, a gesture both blessing and command. "You will walk as the woman who chose life." A shiver passed through me. Alive, awake, reborn, but still wounded in places no spring water could reach. I inhaled deeply. "What must I do when I reach the city?" "Nothing," she murmured. "Not at first. Your presence alone will shake Babylon more violently than any army." Her eyes gleamed with a dark knowing. "When ghosts return, the living tremble." I lowered my gaze. "I do not want to be a ghost." "You are not," she said. "You are the storm before dawn." Later, Ashur Nadine urged me to rest. "You will need strength," he said. "I will need certainty," I answered, but I lay down anyway, on the woven bedding they had given me, beneath the open window slit, where stars clustered like shattered glass. Sleep did not come. How could it? Tomorrow I would walk toward a city that had tried to kill me, toward a throne that no longer belonged to me, toward a son whose heart I no longer recognized. I closed my eyes. Babylon rose before me, its ziggurats climbing the morning sky, its gardens whispering with vines, its people moving like streams through the markets, and in the center, the palace, my palace, its gates now guarded against me. The ache in my chest deepened, not anger, not fear, something harder, a grief sharpened into resolve. I heard the door curtain shift. Ashur Nadine's voice came softly. "You are still awake." I didn't open my eyes. "So are you?" He exhaled, a quiet, weary sigh. He sat beside me, leaving a respectful distance, but close enough that I felt the warmth of him. "Majesty," he murmured, "are you afraid?" For a moment I considered lying, but what was the point? I had died once, I had drowned once, I had clawed my way back toward breath and fate. Fear was not shame, fear was truth. "Yes," I whispered, "I am afraid." He bowed his head. "Then let me carry some of that fear." I opened my eyes. His expression, the rawness in it, undid a part of me. that had stayed armored for years. You already do, I said quietly. A silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but loaded, the kind of silence that knows its own meaning. He spoke again, voice tight. When we descend, I will walk in front of you. If danger comes, I will. No, I sat up slightly. You will walk beside me. His breath caught. Semiramis, beside me. I repeated, as you have always walked. Do not turn yourself into a shield I hide behind. His jaw tightened, a mixture of obedience and pain he didn't name. He nodded slowly, as you wish, but the look in his eyes told me what he wasn't saying. He would die before he let harm reach me, even if I commanded otherwise. As he rose to leave, I spoke without thinking. Ashu. He froze. I swallowed. When you found me in the desert, my voice trembled. Why did you come? He turned slowly. His face was half in shadow and half in torchlight. A man split between duty and truth. I came, he said, because the world without you was a place I could not bear to live in. My breath hitched. He looked away, ashamed of the honesty that had escaped him. I should not have said that, he murmured, but I shook my head. No, you should have. Silence again. A fragile bridge between two hearts that had survived too many storms. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a breath. Then hear one more truth. He stepped closer. I do not follow you because you are queen. I follow you because without you, I am only half a man. The words hit me with the force of a heartbeat that had been waiting years to be felt. Before I could answer, he bowed his head. I will be ready at dawn. He left, and the silence he left behind was not empty. It was full of things that could no longer be unsaid. When I lay back down, the moon hung low over the valley. Its light touched my scar, a pale glow, soft and silver. For the first time, I did not fear it. For the first time, I whispered to it, I will not fade. And in the stillness of the night, as the keeper's chants drifted like a prayer, carried by wind, I felt the mountains exhale, as if approving my choice, as if giving permission for the storm to descend. Tomorrow, I would walk toward Babylon, not to reclaim a throne, not to rebuild an empire, but to reclaim my ending, my way, my truth. And the city, the sun, the world would have to face me once more, alive, reborn, unbroken. Dawn did not break. It rose, slow, deliberate, as if the sun itself was weary of shining on what I was about to do. Mist curled along the terraces, thin and pale, like the breath of ancient spirits, watching from the cracks in the mountains. The keepers had gathered long before sunrise, silent, hooded, lined along the pathway, as if forming a corridor of fate. Ashanadin stood at the foot of the stone steps, armor strapped tight, jaw tense, eyes following my every movement, as if protecting me with sight alone. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of what waited below. Babylon, my city, my throne, my son, my unfinished story. The silver-haired woman approached me one last time. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," I said truthfully, "but I am willing." She smiled. "Small, sad, proud, that is all the gods ever require." She reached into a clay vessel, carried by 2 younger keepers. From within it, she lifted a single ember, blue and glowing, alive without burning. The first fire, the flame that had burned since before writing, before kings, before Babylon itself. She held it near my chest. "Semiramis," she whispered, "you carry the blood of water and the breath of storms. Now take the fire that will light your path." The ember did not burn me. It sank into my skin. A flash of warmth, a pulse of something ancient, then vanished. A faint glow lingered beneath my ribcage. A spark, a promise, a warning. Ashur-nadin's eyes widened at the sight of it. The woman stepped back. "You will need it," she said softly. "What waits below has forgotten your power. This will remind them." I swallowed hard. "What exactly waits below?" She paused, then answered in a voice like a stone cracking. "Fear." We began the descent. The air grew warmer with each step. The thin chill of the mountains gave way to the dense breath of the earth. Ashur-nadin walked beside me, just as I'd commanded, though every instinct in his body wanted to shield, to block, to take the lead. He asked nothing, spoke nothing, but his presence was a fortress. The path twisted downward, steep rock, loose gravel, narrow ledges where the wind threatened to push us into the void. Once my foot slipped. Ashur-nadin's hand gripped my arm instantly, strong, sure, as if his bones remembered this motion. Better than breath, our eyes met. He didn't say it, but I heard it. "Anyway, I will not let you fall." Halfway down the mountain, I stopped. Ashur-nadin halted beside me. The valley of the keepers spread above us, a quiet cradle of torches and stone already shrinking in the distance. Once I stepped away from it completely, I knew I would never return, not because I wasn't welcome, but because endings demand distance. Ashur-nadin watched me silently as I memorized the valley with one long, steady gaze. "It was sanctuary," I whispered. "It was refuge," he said. "It was birth." He nodded. "But your life," he added gently, "is waiting down there." He pointed toward the plains, toward Babylon, toward everything that could still love me or kill me. I drew a breath that tasted like stone and courage. "Then let us finish this." By midday, we reached the foothills. The wind shifted, warmer, heavier, carrying the faint scent of the river I once ruled. Babylon was still far, but no longer a dream or a memory. It was a pulse, a call. Ashur-nadin scanned the horizon. "We must move carefully," he said. "Your son's scouts are everywhere." I tightened my grip on my staff. "If they see me now," I murmured, "they will think I am a ghost." He glanced at me, jaw set. "Perhaps that is not a disadvantage." A faint smile touched my lips. "Perhaps not." We walked in silence after that, 2 figures returning from a world that did not belong to man. My steps were steady, my breath even, my skull warm beneath the skin, a crescent moon guiding me forward, alive, living, unfinished. As sunset bled across the plains, a shape appeared on a distant ridge, a lone rider, dark, still, watching. My breath slowed. Ashur-nadin placed a hand on the hilt of his blade. "Don't move," he murmured. The rider did not advance, did not flee, just watched. Then, slowly, he raised a horn to his lips. The note that echoed across the valley was sharp, long, piercing, a warning, a signal. Ashur-nadin's jaw clenched. "They've spotted us." He turned to me. "We can run east into the marshlands. Lose them there." "No." My voice was calm, still, settled. I stepped forward. Ashur-nadin grabbed my wrist in panic. "Semiramis, what are you doing?" I lifted my chin as the sound of hooves rippled across the plain from multiple directions, haunting me again. The queen who wouldn't die, the mother they feared, the legend they couldn't bury. "What I was born to do," I said quietly. "And what is that?" Ashur-nadin whispered. I turned to him, eyes steady, breath even, the first fire glowing faintly beneath my ribs. "Face them." He stared at me, as if seeing the meaning of prophecy. For the first time, the wind rose. Hoofbeats thundered closer. The sun dipped behind the ridge. I stepped forward alone, a queen walking into the jaws of fate. Alive, ready, unbroken. They came like a storm that had forgotten how to whisper. Hooves tearing the earth, armor clattering like broken thunder, dust rising in thick waves that burned the throat and stung the eyes. 4 riders, the same number as before, not the same men, but the same intent. The sun dipped behind them, casting their shadows long across the plain, so that for a moment they looked less like men and more like creatures carved from dusk. Ashur-nadin stepped half a pace in front of me, hand on his blade, body coiled, and then, ready to kill or die, in a single motion, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "No." He froze. "Stand beside me," I whispered. "Not before me." His jaw tightened, but he obeyed. The 4 riders slowed as they drew near, their horses snorting, stamping, skittish for reasons their riders did not yet understand. The leader, a broad-shouldered man, with a scar running from eye to jaw, lifted his hand, and the others halted. His gaze swept over me. Confusion, shock, disbelief, then fear. "Impossible." He breathed. "We left you bleeding in the ravine." I stepped forward. "No," I said softly. "You left a woman who refused to die." The wind shifted. The blue amber beneath my ribs warmed. A soft, steady pulse. The man swallowed hard. We had reports. We were told you died." I nodded once. "I did." Their horses startled back a step. I continued. "I died in the sand, died in the cave, died in the ravine." My eyes locked onto his, and then I chose to live. He looked at his men, confusion twisting into unease. One whispered, She looks like a specter." "Ah," another hissed, Ghosts don't cast shadows. Gods do. The third muttered. A beat of silence. The leader steadied himself and forced bravado into his voice. We serve the king, he said. We have orders to escort you back. No, I interrupted. You have orders to kill me. He flinched. Ashur-nadin's hand tightened on his weapon. I lifted mine to stop him. The leader swallowed again, choking on truth. He couldn't finish, so I finished for him. My son is afraid. Silence rippled outward. My voice remained steady, calm as river stone. He is afraid of my return, afraid of my name, afraid that Babylon will remember who built its gardens and raised its towers. I stepped closer. The moon scar on my thigh pulsed once, a soft ache, a reminder. He is afraid. I repeated, because he knows the truth. A queen does not die, because a frightened boy commands it. The man trembled. Then, forcing strength into his shaking voice, Your Majesty, we have no quarrel with you, but the king fears rebellion. He believes your return will tear the city apart. I held his gaze. It might. He blinked, but not because I will raise an army. A breath, because I will raise the truth. Ashur-nadin stepped fully beside me now, his posture calm, but his eyes sharp. The leader looked between us, struggling to decide whether he faced a woman or an omen. What are your intentions? He finally whispered. To reclaim your throne? I shook my head. No. His eyes widened. Then, what? I stepped close enough that he could see the faint glow beneath my ribcage. To reclaim myself. The horses reared back. The men's faces paled. Even Ashur-nadin inhaled sharply. Beside me, one of the soldiers whispered, Are we to fight her? The leader shook his head with slow, dawning horror. How do you kill what death has already taken? I held out my hands, empty, open, unarmed. You don't. A long moment passed. The wind finally settled. The dust lowered. The leader closed his eyes, not in prayer, but in surrender. We cannot follow the king's orders, he said. Not against this. I inclined my head. Then you choose wisely. He lifted his gaze, voice barely steady. What would you have us do? I stepped back beside Ashur-nadin and turned toward the distant outline of Babylon, glowing faintly under the last breath of daylight. Right west, I said quietly. Tell no one you found me. Tell no one I live. They hesitated. Go, I commanded softly, the tone of a queen, gentle but unbreakable. They obeyed. The horses turned. The riders departed. Hoofbeats faded into silence. Ashur-nadin exhaled a breath he had been holding for far too long. You didn't kill them, he murmured. I didn't need to, I answered. They saw enough. He looked at me then, not with awe, not with fear, but with a deep, steady understanding. What now? Semiramis, the sky darkened. A single star appeared above Babylon, the first sign of night, the first witness of what was coming. I stepped forward, the air stirring at my heels. Now, I whispered, we continue toward Babylon, toward truth, toward the ending. I would choose the plains quieted after the hunters vanished into dusk. Silence returned, not the silence of peace, but the silence before a city realizes it is no longer alone. Babylon was still distant, its gates like faint teeth on the horizon, but something had changed. The wind, it carried a tremor, as if the earth itself had started whispering secrets. To the sky, Ashur-nadin walked beside me, his steps sure, his eyes always scanning the horizon. He said little, he didn't need to. The air said enough. We reached the outskirts of the Babylonian farmlands by early morning. Fields of barley moved like pale waves under a gray dawn. Smoke curled from clay ovens. Dogs barked in the distance. Children's voices drifted faintly through the cool air. Ordinary life, life that should not have noticed me, but it did. The first woman who saw me, a shepherdess tending goats, froze as if struck by lightning. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, her hands trembled so violently. The rope she held slipped from her fingers. She whispered one single word. No, not disbelief, recognition. I stepped closer, my hood drawn low. You know me? She nodded slowly, not in fear, but in awe. Lady of the Gardens, she whispered. Mother of the river, we heard you died. I lowered my hood. Her hand flew to her mouth. She dropped to her knees. Forgive us, she breathed. Forgive Babylon. We should have protected you. My chest tightened painfully. No, I said softly. Rise, there is nothing to forgive. But she shook her head. The city mourned majesty, even if the palace did not. People whispered your name like a prayer. They were afraid to speak too loud. I swallowed hard. And now? I asked. She looked up at me with eyes full of something I had not seen since before India. Hope they will whisper louder. Ashur-nadin touched my arm gently. Majesty, we should go. I nodded, but as we left, the woman ran toward her home, already shouting, she lives. Semiramis lives. The first whisper, the first spark, the first fracture. In the silence, my son had tried to build. By midday, we reached a small trade town. Nothing grand. A marketplace of wooden stalls. A well in the center. A few donkeys tied in the shade. People moved about with baskets and sacks. Voices weaving together into a gentle hum of daily life. Until they saw me. It began with one man, a potter, hands covered in clay. He blinked, blinked again, frowned, stepped closer. Majesty, he whispered. He looked behind me, as if expecting soldiers or chariots. I took a breath. Yes, I said softly. I am Semiramis. Silence spread like a wave. Slow, wide, unstoppable. Someone dropped a sack of grain. A clay cup shattered. A child grabbed her mother's sleeve. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Mouths parted in soundless shock. A woman whispered, she's dead. She must be a vision. A man countered, trembling. Visions do not cast shadows. Then the sound I did not expect. People kneeling, one by one, dozens, 100. The potter bowed his head deeply. We thought you abandoned us. A painful knot tightened inside my chest. No, I said softly. I was driven out. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ashur Nadine stepped closer to me protectively, but I touched his arm. Let them come, and they did. An old woman touched my cloak, fingers trembling. You look thin, Majesty. A young boy stared up, wide-eyed. My mother says you built the gardens so she could sleep in their shade. A merchant wiped tears from his cheeks. They told us you died in disgrace. He whispered. The palace said you betrayed Babylon. My jaw tensed. I betrayed nothing, I said softly. And then, almost involuntarily, my voice strengthened. I gave everything until there was nothing left to give. People bowed deeper. Others wept. Someone whispered, Does the king know you live? Ashurnadin answered before I could. He soon will. The crowd shivered, not with fear, with anticipation. Babylon loved me still. Babylon remembered. Babylon whispered. The queen returns. As we left the village, travelers on the road slowed their carts. A group of fishermen stared, as if seeing a myth walking toward them. A caravan of traders halted, men scrambling off their camels to kneel in the dust. Every person we passed carried the whisper forward. Semiramis lives tell the next village, tell the river towns, tell Babylon, tell everyone. By the time the sun lowered, burning red over the plains, the whisper was no longer a whisper. It was a hum, a tremor, a rumor turning into certainty. Ashur-nadin walked in silence, but I saw the truth etched into his expression. This was already bigger than us, bigger than a wounded queen, bigger than a frightened king, bigger than the keeper's prophecy. This was the beginning of a storm. We crested a small hill as dusk turned purple, and there, in the distance, stood Babylon. Its walls rose like a mountain of stone. Its gates shimmered under torchlight. Its temples reached upward, like hands begging the heavens. A city I had built, a city I had bled for, a city I had loved more fiercely than I had ever loved a man. My breath caught. Ashur-nadin stopped beside me. Are you ready? He asked quietly. No, I whispered, but I will go anyway. He nodded, as you always have. And then, from the road behind us, a rider approached at full speed, dust rising in his wake. He halted before us, breathless. Majesty, he cried. Majesty, listen. I steadied myself. Speak. The whisper reached Babylon. An hour ago, Ashur-nadin stiffened. My pulse throbbed. The rider gulped air. It spread through the markets, through the river quarter, through the temple steps. He swallowed. And now the city says. The city says. I stepped forward. What does Babylon say? The man's voice trembled. They say, the river trembled once when your name was spoken. They say, the gardens bloomed at sunset. Light. They say the gods have returned their queen. I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt the city call to me, alive, afraid, awake. Ashur-nadin whispered, "This is the beginning." I opened my eyes. "No," I said softly. "This is the reminder. Babylon had not forgotten me after all. Now it would remember, whether it wanted to or not." The closer we came to Babylon, the heavier the air became, thick with heat, with dust, with memory. It was the same air I once breathed when I was queen, yet it felt different now, sharper, charged, waiting, as if the city itself held its breath. Ashur-nadin walked close, every muscle taut, his eyes scanning the fields, the roads, the shifting patterns of people moving toward the great gate, because people were moving far more than usual. Farmers abandoned their carts, market women left their stalls, children stopped playing with clay toys and clutched their mother's skirts. Hundreds began walking toward the gate of Ishtar, not because they were ordered, because they had heard the whisper, Semiramis lives, and they had to see whether the dead had returned. When the walls of Babylon finally rose before me, my body stopped on its own, not from fear, from ache, deep, soul-level ache. Those walls, the blue, glazed bricks that shimmered like river water in the sun. I had walked their length 1,000 times. I knew every crack, every seal, every stone, and yet seeing them again felt like standing at the threshold of a former life that still remembered my footsteps. I whispered, barely breathing, "I built this." Ashur-nadin's voice was soft. "You built more than walls." The sun hit the tiles, lighting the lions and bulls carved upon them, their bodies fierce, their eyes eternal, guardians of a city that had forgotten the woman who had placed them there. But as I watched, the lines seemed to glow, their blue deepening, their gold brightening, as if they recognized me, as if they said, "You are late, but you are home." People poured in from side roads, from river banks, from markets. By the time we reached the wide approach leading to the gate, there were hundreds behind us, then thousands. Voices rose, not chanting, not shouting, murmuring, a trembling hum, a living force. Is it her? It cannot be, but she walks. She wears no crown. She needs no crown. Look at her eyes. She has returned. Bless the gods. Semiramis, Semiramis. My name became a ripple, then a wave, then something vast, something alive. Ashur-nadin stepped closer to me. "Majesty, if the guards panic, they will, and if they draw weapons, they will." He swallowed. "And if they try to seize you, they will try." He clenched his jaw. "Then we do nothing," I said calmly. "Nothing violent, nothing rash." My eyes remained on the gate. "They must see I do not come as conqueror." He nodded, "Though not easily, and if they refuse to see," I answered simply, "then the city will decide." As we approached, the guards atop the gate stiffened. One dropped his spear, another stumbled backward. A horn sounded, but it came out trembling, the note cracking in the heat. The captain of the gate, a tall man with wide shoulders, stepped forward atop the rampart, face pale as ash. He shouted down, "Halt! Identify yourself." I stepped into the full light of the sun and lowered my hood. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Some cried, some dropped to their knees. Some reached out hands, as if afraid I might dissolve into dust. The captain stared at me, first with confusion, then with disbelief, then with terror. His mouth trembled. "Lady, Lady of Babylon." His voice cracked. "You are dead." I answered. The crowd surged with breath. He swallowed. "If this is trickery, no trick," I said softly. "Only truth." He staggered back a step. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "we buried mourning offerings for you." The priests said. The palace announced. The king declared. I know what my son declared. His face tightened. Fear and loyalty, tearing him in two. "What do you seek?" he asked. "Entry," I said. "Nothing more." He blinked rapidly. You come alone?" I glanced at Ashur Nadine. "Not alone," I corrected gently, "but without armies." The captain gripped the battlement. "You do not seek the throne?" "No." He exhaled, shakily, relief mixing with anxiety. The crowd behind me pressed forward, not violently, but like a heartbeat swelling. "Open the gate," I said quietly. The captain froze. I cannot, not without the king's approval." "Your Majesty, if I open the gate, he will fear you," I finished. "The same way he fears me." His entire body trembled. "This will cause chaos." I nodded once. "Yes." He stared, thunderstruck. Then he whispered, "Then let Babylon choose." He turned sharply to his men. "Open the gate." A gasp tore through the crowd, like wind hitting fire. Chains clanked, gears ground. The massive wooden doors began to part. With a deep, ancient rumble, light spilled through the widening crack. Gold, brilliant, blinding. Ashur Nadi's breath caught. He whispered, "You are not a ghost." No, I was something worse, and something greater. A queen reborn, a legend unfinished, a woman walking willingly into the heart of her own danger. As the gates fully opened, the city's breath reached me. The smell of river reeds, baked bread, temple, incense, and something else. Fear and anticipation. Together, I stepped forward, one step, then another, then across the threshold, back into Babylon, back into destiny, back into the ending. I would write myself. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, Babylon seemed to inhale, as if the entire city, its stones, its river, its gardens, its children, its merchants, its priests, felt something shift in the fabric of its ribs. The gate of Ishtar closed behind me with a deep, echoing thud. Not prison, not protection. A heartbeat. Ashur Nadine stayed at my side, every muscle alert, ready to draw steel, ready to kill, ready to die. But he did not speak. He understood. My presence alone was the weapon. We walked into the avenue of processions, and the city saw me. A potter's apprentice, carrying clay jars, froze mid-step. The jars fell, cracked, shuddered. He stared as though witnessing the return of a miracle or a curse. His lips parted, shaking. It's her. A woman at a spice stall turned. Her hands dropped to the cloth she was folding. Her eyes widened with a fear that melted into awe. A guard near the temple gate stumbled backward so violently he nearly fell, and then, from somewhere deep in the crowd, a scream split the air. Semiramis. It was not fear, it was recognition breaking free. After months of suffocating silence, it was the sound of a city remembering. And then it began. Whispers, gasps, crying, shouts. She lives. The queen walks. Goddess, return. Mother of the gardens, blessed be the river. She has come back. The whisper had reached the city, but whispers are fragile. Seeing me was not. Seeing me was a blow to the chest, a truth that could not be swallowed, a ghost that refused to disappear, a queen who walked on 2 living feet. Within minutes, the narrow street flooded. People poured from houses, from courtyards, from rooftop gardens, from workshops and temple schools. Mothers lifted children onto their hips to see. Elders pushed through crowds with shaking hands. Men who had fought in my armies removed their headscarves in disbelief, but no one touched me. Not yet. They looked at me as if the line between life and death had thinned, as if I walked on both sides. I stepped forward. The crowd parted, not by command, but from instinct. Eyes wide, breath held. My voice was quiet, but carved through the air. I have returned. A woman sobbed. A merchant dropped to his knees. A young girl whispered, "She is real. She is real." Ashur-nadin leaned close to me. "Majesty, this will reach the palace within minutes." I nodded. That is the point. Up ahead, a line of palace guards marched toward us, spears raised, armor gleaming, faces set in rigid fear. Their captain shouted, "Back, clear the street, by order of the king." He stopped mid-sentence. He saw me, his face drained of color, as if life itself fled from him. "By the gods," he whispered. "Lady Semiramis." He turned to his men. "Lower your weapons." They didn't move, not out of disobedience, out of shock. I stepped closer. "Will you bar my path?" I asked. The captain dropped to one knee so fast. His armor clanked like thunder. "No," he breathed. "We would not bar a river. We would not bar a goddess." The street gasped. Ashur-nadin stiffened. I lifted my chin. "I am not a goddess." The captain trembled. "Then you are something. A king has no right to kill." His men dropped their spears, one by one. Clang, clang, clang. And then kneeling. The noise of metal hitting stone echoed down the entire avenue like a new law being written. Word spread faster than sound. Windows flung open. Doors burst outward. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Workers left half-laid bricks and rushed into the streets. Faces upon faces upon faces. Thousands now, crowding balconies, filling rooftops, surrounding me in a living circle. They didn't shout my name anymore. They chanted it slow at first, then louder. Semiramis, Semiramis, Semiramis. The ground vibrated. The very walls seemed to tremble. Babylon was waking up. Babylon was remembering. Babylon was choosing. And its choice was not in the palace. Its choice walked barefoot through the city it built. Before we even reached the final avenue, a messenger burst from a side street. Breathless, sweating, panicked, he recognized me and stumbled backward, dropping the scroll he carried. Ashur-nadin picked it up. "What news?" I asked. The messenger pointed toward the ziggurat, terrified. "The king, he knows you live." He swallowed hard. "He has barricaded himself in the throne hall. The high priests gather. The nobles are arguing. The guards don't know whose orders to follow. The city is splitting, some in fear, some in praise." I nodded slowly, exactly as the keepers foretold. My son's nightmare had begun, but this time I was not the hunted. I was the return. I looked toward the palace of heaven, its blue walls gleaming under the late sun, its gates already surrounded by a rising ocean of citizens. Ashur-nadin whispered, "Semiramis, when we reach that gate, everything changes." I placed a hand over my heart, felt the faint warmth of the first fire burning beneath my ribs. "Yes," I said, "everything." And then, with thousands behind me and fear ahead of me, I walked, not as queen, not as ghost, as truth. I knew, before a single messenger reached him, before the priests gasped, before the nobles panicked, before the palace guards stumbled over their own fear. I knew, the very moment my son felt me inside his city, because a mother recognizes the tremor in the world when her child's breath breaks, even from a distance, even after betrayal, even after death. We had not yet reached the palace gate when a hush rippled through the crowd. From the highest balcony of the palace of heaven, a figure appeared, tall, rigid, dressed in gold and lapis, crowned. My son, the boy I once carried on my hip. As we walked through the gardens, the boy who had once fallen asleep on my shoulder, while listening to the sound of the fountains, the boy who had ordered me killed. He stood motionless as the crowd parted like a river to reveal me below. Even from this distance, I saw the shock, the raw, naked disbelief, the terror blooming behind his eyes like poison. His hands gripped the railing so tightly, his knuckles whitened. Around him, 3 high priests whispered urgently. 2 nobles argued. A eunuch backed away, as if the king might strike him. But my son did not hear any of them. His gaze was locked on me, frozen, like a child who sees the ghost of the mother he betrayed. He took 1 step backward, small, involuntary, like a heartbeat stuttering. Another. Then he caught himself, straightened, and tried to mask the fear, but he could not hide it from me. "Majesty," Ashur-nadin whispered beside me, "he is unraveling." No, he had unraveled long ago. Today, he simply realized the threads had snapped. The crowd noticed it too. People murmured, "He looks afraid." "Does he see her?" he sees a ghost. No, he sees justice. A ripple of discomfort spread across the nobles on the balcony. The priests exchanged looks, and Babylon, the Babylon that had once loved me, once followed me, once grieved me, felt the scales tip, not toward rebellion, not toward violence, toward memory, toward truth, toward me. The king lifted a shaking hand, as if to summon guards. No sound came. He tried again. Still nothing. His voice failed him in front of all Babylon. Finally, on the third attempt, his whisper carried across the courtyard. Mother, a tremor rushed through the crowd. Ashurnadin stiffened beside me. I did not speak, not yet, but my silence hit him harder than any accusation. His shoulders flinched. The priests leaned in urgently. Your Majesty, do not show weakness. She is here to overthrow. No. Another hissed. She's here for vengeance. The king lifted both hands to silence them, but his gaze never left mine. Mother, he whispered again, voice cracking. How are you alive? Pain tightened in my chest. He sounded like a scared child, with a crown too heavy for his skull. I answered with the truth he had always known, but never accepted. I chose to live. The words struck him like a blow. He steadied himself on the railing. The crowd buzzed. Whispers collided. Someone cried. Someone prayed. He swallowed. You should not have come back. A faint smile touched my lips, and yet I did. You cannot be here, he said, voice shaking. The city will what? I asked softly. Remember me? Listen to me? Look at me? His breath hitched. You challenge my authority. He whispered. No, I said. I challenge your fear. His eyes widened, as if I'd peeled back his skin and touched the raw truth beneath. You always feared me. I continued gently. From the moment you became king, that is not true. It is, I said, and you fear me now more than ever. The crowd listened, spellbound. My son trembled. You think, I said, voice calm, steady, inevitable, that my presence will make you small. If he stepped back as if struck, but you made yourself small, I whispered. Not I. He gripped the railing again, as if trying to keep the world from spinning out of his grasp. You cannot stay, he said. You cannot. I am not here to stay, I said. I am not here for your throne. He froze. Confusion crashed over his face. Then why? He demanded. Why return? Why haunt me? Why come with all of Babylon watching? I stepped forward, one slow step. The crowd parted around me, like a tide before a moon, to finish what I began, I said. He swallowed. And what is that? I lifted my face toward him, toward the boy I birthed, the king he had become, the man he could not bear to be, to choose my ending myself. A gasp rippled through the city. My son's face drained of color. He whispered, Mother. No. Behind him, a priest hissed, She's here to die in the city, to become legend, to overshadow you forever. But the king ignored him. All he heard was the truth he had always feared. I had not come for him, nor for the throne, nor for revenge. I had come to reclaim my story, and Babylon was the only place it could end. Guards rushed into the courtyard. Nobles shouted. Priests argued. The palace split into chaos. Two worlds colliding. One that had proclaimed me dead. One that now watched me breathe. Ashur-nadin leaned close. Semiramis, this is no longer a return. No, I whispered. It is a reckoning. My son pressed his palm flat against the railing. Knuckles white, breath thin. He whispered one final word, a plea born of fear, love, and the helplessness of a child who had lost his mother long ago. Please, and I whispered back, then calm down. The priests panicked, the nobles shouted, the gods hesitated, the city froze, because they all knew when he stepped down from that balcony, there would be no turning back, not for him, not for me, not for Babylon. He did not move at first, not a muscle, not a breath. The city held its silence, like a lung full of air that refused to release. Ashur-nadin stood beside me, tense as drawn steel. The guards on the ramparts shifted uneasily. The priests whispered spells under their breath, as if my return was a curse they needed protection from. But my son, the king, the boy who once pressed his cheek against my shoulder to fall asleep, he stared at me as if the world had cracked in half, and I was the fracture line. His voice, when it finally came, was barely more than breath. You want me to calm down? Yes, I answered. A tremor shuddered through him, a flicker of something old, childish, wounded, flicked across his face. Why? He whispered. Because you cannot rule from a balcony, I said, and I cannot speak to my son from the shadow of a palace wall that pierced him. I saw it. His stance faltered, his shoulders sagged, his hand slipped from the railing. The priests panicked. Your Majesty, do not go down. This is a trap. She is manipulating the people. Her presence will undo your authority. She is here to end your reign. She wants your throne. She wants your life. He raised his hand sharply. Enough. He didn't look at them. He didn't look at the guards. He didn't look at the nobles. He looked at me, just me, as he had when he was small and afraid of storms and monsters under his bed, and the dark, and the very crown he now wore. Slowly, hesitantly, as if stepping toward a dream or a nightmare, he turned toward the stairs. The priests lunged to stop him. The guards stepped forward. The nobles shouted. The crowd gasped. And he whispered so softly I barely heard it. Stand aside. His command cut through them like a blade through silk. They froze, bound by the authority of the king and the fragility of a trembling boy. He descended, one step, another, each step echoing like a hammer against the spine of Babylon. The people parted, eyes wide, hearts pounding. When he reached the courtyard, the crowd fell into silence again. He stood a few paces from me, breath uneven, eyes shimmering with something between anger and heartbreak. Mother, he whispered, as if the word might shatter him. The ache in my chest was so sharp, I nearly lost my breath. My son, I said softly. The words trembled through the air, like the pluck of a harp string. His jaw clenched, his eyes reddened, his hands balled into fists, then opened again, as if he didn't know what to do with them. You were dead, he said, voice breaking. I was told, I believed, you were gone. No, my voice was a whisper of steel. You believed what made you feel safe. He flinched. The crowd shifted uneasily. Ashurnadin's hand hovered near his weapon, but did not move. My son swallowed hard, the motion painful, visible, raw. I had no choice, he said. The court, the priests, the nobles, they were all turning against me. They whispered your name behind my back. They said you should rule, not I. I stepped closer, and so they became your fear. He nodded once, a jerking, broken movement, and you believed. I continued quietly that killing me would kill the shadow I cast. His voice cracked. I didn't want you dead. Yes, I said, but you wanted me gone. He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. Tears rimmed his eyes, tears he had probably not shed in years. I was weak, he whispered. I was afraid. I felt the city watching us, every eye, every ear, every beating heart, every king fears. I said softly, that is not sin, but the sin begins when fear becomes your compass. He lowered his hand and finally looked me full in the face, and I saw it clearly. The boy I birthed still lived inside the man, terrified, lonely, drowning in a throne he was never ready to bear. His voice trembled. Why did you come back? The question pierced me, not because it was hard to answer, but because it was so simple to finish my story. He stared. And what is the end of your story, Mother? To take the throne? To destroy me? I stepped forward until I was an arm's length from him. No, I said gently. The end of my story is to free myself. His breath hitched. From what? From you, I whispered. He recoiled, as if struck. The crowd gasped. Ashurnadin stiffened. The gods exchanged fearful glances. My son's voice cracked open. You wish to leave me? No, I whispered. I wish to stop being the monster. Your fear has made me. His eyes overflowed. Tears slid down his cheeks unchecked. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The silence was excruciating. Finally, he managed. What? What do you want from me? I touched my chest, where the first fire still warmed. Beneath the skin, only this, I said. Stand as my son for one final moment, not as king, not as judge, as the child I raised. His lips trembled. Mother, I lifted my hand, slowly, gently. He did not pull away as I cupped his cheek. He leaned into my palm like he had as a boy. When nightmares woke him and he crept into my chambers, his tears fell against my wrist. Forgive me, he whispered, voice shattering. The crowd couldn't breathe. Ashurnadin looked away to give us dignity. I held my son's face tenderly. I forgave you, I whispered, long before you asked. He closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, he was mine again. Not Babylon's king, not a man scarred by fear, just my child. But then I felt it, the shift. His breath changed, his spine straightened, his eyes opened with something fierce behind them. Fear had not left him, it had simply taken a new shape. He whispered, "If you stay, they will choose you over me." My throat tightened. "Yes," I said softly, "they will. Then you must not stay." The words were not command, not plea, not threat. They were truth, his and mine. "I know," I whispered. He swallowed. "So this is your end." "No," I said. "This is the path to my end." His voice trembled. "Where does it lead?" I placed my hand over the moon scar on my thigh, away from Babylon. He exhaled, a trembling, broken sound. "Then I will let you leave." The crowd gasped. The priests recoiled. The nobles shouted in panic. But the king, my son, lifted his hand and silenced all of Babylon. "I owe her that much," he said. His voice shook. "I owe her my life." I stepped back. He bowed his head, not as a king, as a child, as a son who finally understood the weight of what he had done. Ashur-nadin whispered, "Semiramis, are you ready?" "No," but I nodded. "Yes, because now the road toward my chosen ending lay open, and Babylon, my city, would carry my name, not as queen, not as goddess, but as a woman who chose her fate." The decision had been made, not by decree, not by counsel, not by threat or sword, by something deeper, a truth that neither I nor my son could outrun any longer. I had to leave Babylon to complete the end that waited for me, and he, the king, had to let me. The moment hung in the air, like the echo of a broken bell. No one spoke. No one dared to breathe. My son lowered his hand, the gesture trembling, and stepped back from me. It was not a retreat. It was permission. Something inside me cracked quietly. I bowed my head to him, not as queen, not as ghost, but as mother. For the last time, I whispered, "May the gods walk with you." His breath broke. "And with you," he said, voice raw, fragile, bare. Ashur-nadin moved to my side as the king stepped away, but the guards, those same men who once chased me across the desert with orders to spill my blood, lowered their spears and parted to let me pass. The nobles watched with pale faces, torn between duty and disbelief. The priests whispered hurried prayers, as if afraid I might curse the city by walking away from it. But the people, they did something I did not expect. They moved, slowly, silently. They spread across the courtyard, down the stairs, into the long avenue that led to the gate, and they opened a path, a corridor of human breath and trembling silence, a living road, a final honor. All eyes followed me, all hearts pulled toward me, as if they knew this was the last time they would ever see me alive. Ashur-nadin whispered, voice thick with emotion, "Semiramis, they mourn you." Before you're even gone, I stepped forward. The city bowed. The avenue of processions stretched before me. The same path I had walked on festivals, on coronation days, on nights when lanterns floated down the river, and the air smelled of jasmine and sweet wine. But today there was no music, no chariots, no banners, no incense, just footsteps, mine, and the soft, choked quiet of a city grieving a queen who was not yet dead but already lost. Children peered at me from behind their mothers' skirts, their eyes wide and wet. Elders pressed trembling hands against their hearts as I passed. Merchants lowered their heads. Potters paused their wheels. Fishermen stopped mending their nets. A young woman, barefoot, holding a clay bowl to her chest, stepped forward as I passed. She whispered, barely audible, "Thank you. I didn't ask for what. I didn't need to." Another voice came. A man, older, for the gardens. Then another, for the peace you brought us, for the years we slept without fear, for the justice you gave, for the mercy, for the rivers, for the children, for Babylon. The swell of whispered gratitude moved with me like a tide. I had been haunted, betrayed, silenced, left for dead. But Babylon, my Babylon, remembered the truth, even when the palace lied. Tears rose in my eyes, not from weakness, from recognition. This city had been my life, my pride, my wound, my purpose, and now it was my farewell. Halfway down the avenue, I felt a presence behind me, a shadow moving carefully, hesitantly. I turned. My son had followed, not close, not dramatically, just enough that only I saw it. He did not speak, he did not step nearer. He simply watched me. His face was torn open, with a grief he could not mask. For the first time, since he had ordered my death, I saw the child he had been, the one who clung to my robe when thunder frightened him, and who whispered my name in his sleep. I placed my hand upon my heart. He mirrored the gesture, a silent vow, a final bond, a peace neither of us would speak aloud. Then he stopped walking. He would not follow me further. He could not. He had already broken the one rule a king could never break. He had chosen blood over the crown. He stood there watching. As I continued down the avenue, I did not look back again. If I had, I might have shattered. When the gate of Ishtar rose ahead of me again, blue and brilliant and sorrowful, the crowd halted. No one blocked my path. No one clung to my cloak. No one begged me to stay. They understood. Somehow, without a word spoken, they understood that this departure was not exile. It was destiny. The city bowed as I approached its walls. 1,000 heads lowered. 1,000 breaths trembled. The captain of the gate, the same man who had nearly fainted upon seeing me live, stepped forward with reverence in his eyes. He whispered, "Your Majesty, we will never forget." I touched his shoulder gently. "You will?" I said, "and that is how it should be, for cities must forget to continue living, but legends remember themselves." He signaled the chains. The gate opened slowly, groaning like an old heart that did not want to let go. The sun lay warm outside, waiting for me. Ashur-nadin stepped closer. Semiramis, he murmured, once you cross that gate, I know. It means yes, it is the road to. He couldn't finish, so I did, softly, to my chosen end. He bowed his head, not as my guard, not as my commander, as the man who had loved me in silence his entire life. Then I walk with you, he whispered, and together we stepped out of Babylon. The gate closed behind us. For the last time, the plain stretched before us, wide, open, quiet, no crowds, no cries, no city buzz, only the wind and the sound of our footsteps. Behind me, I heard a single, distant cry, a voice breaking on grief. Semiramis. I didn't know if it was a child, or a woman, or a man, or even my son. I did not turn to look. A queen must look forward. At the end, only forward. Ashur-nadin walked in silence, matching my pace, his presence steady, unshaking. Ahead of us lay the road to the place where fate waited, to the place where the prophecy of the moon-shaped scar would be fulfilled, to the place where my life would meet its final page. I whispered to the wind, I am ready. The wind whispered back, then walk. The road leaving Babylon felt nothing like the road that had brought me to it. Then I had walked with the weight of history pressing on my shoulders. Now I walked with the weight of my ending. The wind was warm, the air quiet, the dust soft beneath my sandals. No soldiers pursued us. No messengers rushed behind. No horns sounded. Babylon did not chase me. Babylon mourned me. There is a silence cities make only once. When they understand, they have seen someone for the last time. That silence followed me like a shadow. Ashur-nadin walked at my side, his presence constant, solid, unmoving, a pillar of devotion. In the middle of a dissolving world, he had not spoken since the gate closed behind us, but he didn't need to. His silence told me everything, that he understood where I was going, even if he didn't know the place. And he understood something deeper, that I would not return. When the sun dipped behind the plains and the sky turned purple, we made camp among low hills. There was no fire. I did not want the world to see where I slept. I sat on a rock, watching twilight bleed into night. Ashur-nadin stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes scanning the shadows. You haven't asked, I said quietly. He turned, asked, what? Where I'm going. He studied me, fiercely, helplessly, like a man trying to hold together a crumbling wall with bare hands. I don't need to ask, he said. Why? Because I know you. Semiramis, a breath. I know that when you choose a path, nothing on earth or under it can pull you away. I looked toward the horizon. A thin sliver of moon hung above the plains, the same crescent that marked my skin. It's strange, I whispered, to walk, knowing your footsteps are counted. His voice softened. You think this is the end of your story? I touched the scar on my thigh. The faint pulse of the moon warming beneath my fingers. I know it is. He stepped closer, jaw tight. Then tell me where that road leads. I shook my head. No. Why? Because if I speak it aloud, it becomes real. His eyes burned. Semiramis, you're walking toward death. Yes. He inhaled sharply, a sound like pain made visible. And do you expect me to walk beside you? While you do it, I turned to him. Assure nothing. You have walked beside me through life, through betrayal, through resurrection. My voice trembled. This last road, I walk alone. His breath broke. No, he whispered. Yes, I said gently. This path was always mine. He knelt before me. For the first time in all the years I had known him. Not as commander, not as protector, not as subject, as a man, as a man. He whispered, I beg you, don't go where I cannot follow. Tears stung my eyes, then don't follow. I said softly, walk beside me, for as long as the road allows. He lowered his forehead to my hands. Then I will walk until the earth itself stops beneath my feet. We walked at dawn. The plains thinned into rocky stretches. Vegetation faded, replaced by stone, bleached by countless suns. Birds disappeared, rivers turned into dry scars. Even the wind grew quiet, as if fearful of brushing too close to a faded woman. Ashur-nadin looked around. This land is dead. Yes, I said, this path is cursed. No, not cursed. A breath marked. He swallowed hard. By what? By destiny. He exhaled slowly and did not question me again, but the silence that followed was thick with dread, a dread he would not speak, and I could not soothe. By midday, we reached an abandoned oasis, a ring of cracked palm stumps, a pool long dried into dust, a faint ruin of an altar, stood half buried in sand. I recognized it, so did he. Ashur-nadin turned sharply to me. This place. Yes, you came here with the Queen's Guard 20 years ago. Yes, you prayed here, he said, for Derceto's blessing before the battle at Kish. Yes, you said, he whispered, that this was a place between life and death. And it is. He stared at the cracked pool, horror dawning across his face. You brought me here, he said, because this is where you end. I closed my eyes. No, I whispered. This is where I begin. He stepped toward me. No, Semiramis, no. You are not leaving me here. I must. Why? I opened my eyes, because there are some deaths that are not punishments, but culminations. Some endings that are not escapes, but fulfillments. Because destiny does not chase, it waits. This is where the prophecy leads, I said quietly. His voice broke. No prophecy rules you. It doesn't rule me. I touched my heart. It completes me. He grabbed my wrist. Semiramis, don't do this. You are more alive now than you have ever been. Yes, I said, and that is why the ending must be mine. He shook his head violently. No, if you die out here, the world will think you ran, fled vanished. Good. Let them wander. Let them tell stories. Let them magnify me into myth and memory. I don't want the world to watch me die. I whispered. His grip faltered. I looked toward the dead oasis, where the altar waited. I want my end to belong to me. He trembled. This is not fair. No, I said softly, but it is right. We walked until sunset, painted the sky crimson and gold. The horizon burned. The wind whispered. The scar on my thigh pulsed with warm pain. I felt dirty dough in the air, in the dust, in the silence. The goddess who carried me into life was waiting to carry me out of it. Ashurnadin stood before me, eyes shining with tears. He refused to let fall. Is this truly your choice? He asked. Yes, I said. He swallowed. Then tell me, what am I to do? After you're gone, I stepped closer. Life. He clenched his jaw. For whom? For yourself, I said, and for the truth of me. He closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek. I wiped it away. With my son. This, he whispered, this is the cruelest mercy. No, I said softly. This is love. The sun lowered. The wind stilled. My shadow lengthened. Across ancient sand, I took one step toward the altar. Ashurnadin's breath caught, like a man drowning. Semiramis. I turned. Yes, I will stay, he whispered, until your last breath. I nodded. And after that, he looked at the horizon. I will carry your story. My heart swelled. Then you will carry my life. I stepped toward the altar again, and the world seemed to bend around me. The prophecy tightened. The ending approached. The road behind me faded, and the road ahead, the road of no return, opened. Night rose around the dead oasis, slowly, almost tenderly, as if darkness itself wanted to soften the weight of what was coming. The last light faded behind the hills. Like a final breath, Ashurnadin and I built no fire. Fire would have been too living, too warm, too hopeful. For a night like this, we sat in silence instead, two silhouettes in the cradle of an ancient wound, two souls wrapped in the hush between life and whatever lies after it. The world around us did not feel empty. It felt expectant, as if the desert itself was holding vigil. Ashurnadin broke the silence first. His voice, so steady all his life, was now as fragile as a reed in the wind. Semiramis, he whispered, tell me the truth. I looked at him, though part of me already knew which truth he sought. What truth? He swallowed hard and stared at the dried pool where water once blessed warriors. The truth about the prophecy. I closed my eyes. I told you the truth. No, he said softly but firmly. Not all of it. He turned to me fully then, moonlight catching the pain in his eyes. You knew you would die young. A pause. You knew before the ravine, before the desert, before the hunt. I did not answer. Silence answered for me. He exhaled in grief. You've carried this knowledge your entire life. Yes, I whispered. He pressed a shaking hand over his eyes. And you never told anyone. I could not. Why? I looked at my hands, the hands that built gardens, led armies, held newborns, touched lovers, and carried a kingdom, because they would have tried to save me. I whispered, and destiny cannot be saved from. His breath stuttered. And I? He asked, what would I have done? I looked at him, lightly touching his cheek. You would have died for me, I said, and that is the one thing the gods would not allow. He closed his eyes, face twisting with heartbreak. Semiramis, the question came so quietly, I almost thought it came from the wind. Ashur-nadin's voice trembled. Will it hurt you? I hesitated, not because I didn't know, but because some truths are merciful only when whispered, only for a moment. I said, and then it will be peace. He bowed his head. When, before dawn, he clenched his jaw. The pain in his expression was the kind of pain that collapses lifetimes. We sat together on the sand, not as queen and soldier, not as ruler and guard, as two souls who had walked through fire and storm and silence together. He finally whispered, Do you fear death? I answered without hesitation, No. He frowned, not in disagreement, but in disbelief. How? He asked. How can a woman who has lived so fiercely fear nothing? I looked at the sky, because death is not my enemy. I whispered. Fear was, loneliness was, silence was. I touched the scar on my thigh. But this ending is mine. He watched me, a raw wound behind his eyes. And what about me? He whispered. What becomes of me after you're gone? I looked at him slowly, tenderly, with the ache of a lifetime. You will live, I said softly. For whom? He asked, voice cracking. For yourself. I whispered, for your truth. He shook his head violently. No, the truth of me is tied to you. I reached for his hand. He let me take it, as though it were the last anchor he had in this world. You are more than my shadow, I said, but he shook his head. No, he whispered, I am the shadow of your light, and when your light goes, I do not know what I become. My heart shattered. Quietly, in my chest, Ashur-nadin, I whispered, you will become the man who carries my story. He pressed his forehead against my hand and whispered, then I will carry it until the gods themselves forget. Silence settled again. Then, suddenly, he spoke in a rush, as if the words had been trapped for decades. I loved you. I turned to him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't shaking. He was confessing. I loved you. He repeated, voice quiet but unbreakable. Not as queen, not as legend, as woman. My breath caught. He continued, I loved you when you raised the gardens. I loved you when you walked the palace halls. I loved you when you smiled at your son, and when you hid your pain from him. I loved you when you bathed in the Tigris, when you led armies, when you returned from India. A tear slid down his cheek, and I love you now at the end. My heart tightened painfully. I know, I whispered. He frowned not in anger, but in ache. Did you ever love me? The desert held its breath. I reached up and touched his face, the gesture gentle, ancient, forbidden. Yes, I whispered, in the quiet places where queens are not permitted to love. His breath broke in half. Near midnight, I rose. Ashurnadin stood with me instantly. What are you doing? I must prepare, I said softly. For what? For the dawn. He swallowed. Tell me how it happens. No, Semiramis. I cannot. He stared at me, tormented. I touched his cheek gently. You are here for my last night, I said, not for my last breath. He exhaled sharply. But no, my voice was calm, but final. You will stay here when the moment comes. He shook his head violently. I cannot let you go alone. You must. He trembled. When you leave me, he whispered. I will break. I kissed his forehead. You will bend, I said softly, but you will not break. The moon crossed the sky. In a pale arc we sat close, but did not speak again. He leaned his head against my arm like a child who finally understands loss. I held his hand. We watched the stars. We listened to the desert breathe. We shared the last silence two souls can never share. When the first thread of dawn touched the horizon, pink and fragile, I rose slowly. He rose with me. Semiramis. His voice broke. Don't go yet. I placed my hand over his heart. I must. He swallowed a sob. I stepped back. He reached for me. Instinct, pain, love. But he stopped because he knew that to follow would be to shatter the ending I had chosen. Tears ran down his face. I whispered, This is the place. He whispered back, This is the moment. I nodded. He whispered, voice cracking, Semiramis, my queen, my light, my heart. I turned away, tears sliding silently. The sky brightened behind me. The moon scar burned once, warm, inevitable, and I walked into the first light of dawn. Toward the end I had been born for, toward the God who had given me life, toward my destiny, toward my death. Dawn arrived, not like a soft breath, but like a blade, sharp, precise, unavoidable. The horizon glowed with that pale pink only deserts know, the color of first light and last chances. I walked alone. Ashurnadin remained behind, as I commanded, though I felt the weight of his eyes pressing against my back. With every step, the desert stretched before me, empty, endless, silent, no birds, no wind, no sound, as if the world itself was holding its breath. For my final moment, I stopped at the center of the dried oasis, the place where water once blessed warriors, the place where I had prayed for victory, strength, guidance, the place where destiny had first whispered my name. The altar stood half buried in cracked earth, a forgotten shrine to gods older than Babylon, older than kings, older than fear. I touched it. The stone was cold, but beneath the coldness, I felt a pulse, a memory of something ancient and sacred. I knelt before it for the first time in all my years. I bowed without crown, without rank, without throne, just a woman kneeling in front of the goddess who had breathed her into life. The air changed. Everything went still, still in a way that was not natural, still in a way that was sacred. The wind did not move, the sky did not shift, even the sun seemed to tremble. On the edge of the horizon, I felt her, not as voice, not as shadow, not as warmth or cold, but as recognition, Tercido, the goddess of the waters, the mother of the deep, the one who shaped my beginning, and waited now for my end. Her presence pressed against me, like a tide, silent, vast, inevitable. My eyes fill. I have come. I whispered. No answer came, because none was needed. She already knew. The prophecy was not about how I would die. It was about who would choose it, and I had. I reached into the folds of my robe and withdrew the blade, not a soldier's blade, not a king's blade, my own, the blade I had carried since the day I first led armies, the blade I had never used to take my own life, because the moment had not been mine, but now it was. The metal shimmered faintly in the newborn sunlight. I set the point against my palm and waited, because something in me needed one final moment. Before stepping into the void, a breeze rose. At first I thought it was Tercido, but it was not. It was Babylon. The wind carried the scent of its gardens, the jasmine, the cedar, the cool spray of its fountains. For a moment, I saw it all. The gates I built, the gardens I raised, the people I loved, the son I birthed, the throne I held, the storms I survived, my life, my vast, terrible, beautiful life, unfurled before me like a tapestry, and I finally understood I was not dying as queen. I was dying as the woman beneath the crown, the woman who had always longed for a destiny that belonged only to herself. I lifted the blade. My hand did not tremble. My breath did not shake. My heart did not fear. I pressed the point against my chest, right where the first fire still glowed faintly beneath the skin. Ashur-nadin's voice broke across the desert. Then, Semiramis, he ran toward me. Too late, too far, too slow. I did not turn. If I turned, my heart would betray my resolve. I whispered one final truth to the goddess who made me. I choose this, and I pushed. A gasp escaped my lips. A small sound, surprised, soft, pain flashed, brave, sharp, clean. Then warmth spread through my chest. Like liquid sunlight, the world tilted. I fell to my knees, not in weakness, but in surrender. The desert embraced me. The altar watched. The sun rose fully. He reached me. At the moment, my breath began to fade. He fell beside me, hands trembling, voice breaking into pieces. Semiramis, Semiramis, please, please, no. I touched his cheek with the last strength I had. Hush, I whispered. It is done. He pressed his forehead to mine, sobbing. Don't leave me. I smiled faintly. I am not leaving you, I whispered. I'm going ahead. His tears fell onto my face, warm against my cooling skin. Semiramis, I love you. I love you. I love you. I know. I breathed, and I loved you in silence. His body shook. Please, stay just a little longer. But time was slipping from my hands. My vision blurred. My breath thinned. The world dimmed. Like a lantern losing oil, I whispered my final words. Soft, slow, steady. Carry me into memory. His cry shattered the air. The sky dimmed. The wind stopped. The desert grew still. I closed my eyes, and with one final exhale, soft as silk, light as a feather, free as water, I left. I slipped beyond the edge of the world and into the arms of the goddess who had waited for me since the moment of my birth. And the desert was quiet. The queen was gone. The woman was gone. Semiramis had died, but the legend had just begun. Ashur-nadin carried her body through the silent desert. The queen who had chosen her own death, the woman whose will had bent the world. When he reached Babylon, the city fell to its knees. No king's decree, no priest's chant, only the raw, staggering grief of a people who understood too late what they had lost. Her son, the king, broke when he saw her, not as a ruler, but as a child, realizing that forgiveness had come. Only in the moment it could no longer be spoken. They said the sky dimmed at her passing. They said the river whispered her name. They said no grave could hold her. So Ashur-nadin returned her to the desert, where destiny first called her breath into being. In time, kings died, cities changed, empires collapsed, but her name did not. Semiramis lived on in every whispered story, every mother's blessing, every tower that touched the sun. She had walked out of the world with her head unbowed and chose her ending as she had chosen her life, with fire, with dignity, and with her own hand. And so the woman was gone, but the legend never faded. Semiramis remained